Let's talk Tanya for the second of. In today's Tanya, we are concluding the Igeres Hateshuvah. We're doing chapter 12 of Igeres Hateshuvah. The topic that we're talking about is the ability to experience joy despite our brokenness over the sins that we have done. And yesterday's Tanya, Dr. Rebbe says that awareness of the sins we have done actually can contribute to our joy, because we understand that every time that we have discomfort, pain, suffering in our lives, that is, in essence, bringing us atonement for the sins that we have done. So it allows us to accept the suffering. But it's more than that it allows us to accept our suffering. It actually allows us to be happy because of our suffering. Why is that? So Dr. Rebbe points to something fascinating. The Ramban, he wrote a commentary on the book of Iyov. And the Ramban says in his introduction to the commentary on the book, we know that Iyov suffered tremendously. He lost his family, he lost his wealth, he was sick and he suffered. And yet the Ramban tells us 70 years of the suffering of Iyov doesn't compare to 1 hour in Gehenna, 1 hour of suffering in the afterlife. Now that sounds very harsh, but you have to understand that everything in the higher worlds is more intense than it is over here. The same is true the opposite way. The same is true with Gan Eden. The pleasures in Gan Eden are way more intense than anything that we can experience down here. It's just the nature of the way things are. But that's pretty scary. That means that the suffering in Gehenna is pretty amazing, pretty incredible, in a negative way. And now we have to understand that a little suffering, a little pain, a little discomfort down here absolves us of a lot of that intense suffering in Gehenna. And why is that? Because Olam Chesed Yibana, our world was created with kindness. In order for this world to be sustained, it requires a lot of kindness from God. And therefore, a little effort down here, or a little suffering down here, can absolve us or can take the place of so much more in the higher worlds that are not dominated by Chesed, by God's kindness. The example that the Rebbe gives is of the sun. Down here in this world, when the sun moves, we have the shade moves. For every inch that the shade is moving, the sun is moving thousands of miles. So we have this idea, 1 inch down here corresponds to thousands of miles up in heaven. And when we think about this, then the inconveniences and even the pain and the suffering we have in life, we realize we can be happy because of it, realizing just how much suffering that is sparing us in the coming world. With this, we have concluded Igeres Hateshuvah. We now have a deeper understanding of Teshuvah. We understand the nature of sin and the damage that it causes. We understand how to wipe away that damage, how to repent, and even more so, Teshuvah Ilah, the higher level of Teshuvah, how to reach a state of absolute unity with God, which follows the lower level of Teshuvah. And the message that we should walk away with from Igeres Hateshuvah is understanding we're human, we mess up. But God in His kindness, He forgives. He gave us a path of Teshuvah, and ultimately, that is why we're put down over here in this world, is to do what's right, and when we mess up, to do Teshuvah, to reconnect. And when we reconnect, we can reconnect in a much greater and stronger way than we were even before we did the sin. With that, we conclude the third part of Tanya, and tomorrow we begin Igeres HaKodesh, the fourth part of Tanya.